At 8:16 Central African time, and we count down to the launch of Channel Africa's event, Africa Matters. And as we do that, we continue to speak to some of the influential voices who will be part of this launch. A first of its kind at Channel Africa, Africa Matters is a platform that aims to engage and find solutions on critical issues on development. The theme for this year is climate change, financing Africa's recovery. And to speak to us about this project, we're joined by Professor Mills Soko, who is a professor of international business strategy at Wits Business School, the institution that has partnered with Channel Africa on this initiative. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Good morning, and good morning to the listeners.
So let's start here then. Why has the business of Wits Business School decided to be part of this initiative?
Wits Business School is a leading African business school that is committed to Africa's social and progress and economic development. And we are very interested in this partnership with SABC Channel Africa because we are committed to Africa's development. And we do so in several ways by undertaking research and innovation, that addresses Africa's unique challenges. We are also concerned with equipping our students with the right skills and also disseminating knowledge that speaks to Africa's challenges and opportunities. We also foster entrepreneurship support. We also coordinate engagements of this nature, which involve policymakers, business, and non-state actors in shaping policies that promote Africa's development. So we have a very close and keen interest in this event, which will be the inaugural summit that will be hosting at Wits Business School on the 25th of March in collaboration with SABC Channel Africa.
Africa faces a lot of challenges, as we know, and how significant is it that Africa Matters is focusing on climate change as one of those challenges at this particular time for the continent?
This is significant because climate change is having a devastating impact, on Africa. Despite the fact that our continent contributes minimally, to global carbon emissions, but the impacts are far-reaching, and we have seen that in several manifestations, extreme weather events. It is exacerbating food insecurity. It resulting in high water stress, and it also aggravates health risks. So it is very important for us to tackle this challenge head on. However, we have key challenges in doing so, because we have a problem. First of all, that is the focus of this summit of insufficient funding. And I was looking at the figures here. It is estimated that Africa needs between 187 and 359 billion US dollars annually for climate adaptation, but only 28 billion US dollars was mobilized globally for adaptation recently. And then there's equally the problem of a debt burden that the African continent faces. And the problem is specifically because most adaptation finance comes in the form of loans, and that aggravates Africa's already high debt burden. And then there's also limited private sector involvement in financing in climate finance. That is why we have invited development finance institutions, commercial banks, institutional investors, and other business organizations to participate in this summit, so that we can mobilize the necessary finance to deal with this problem.
On that point of financing, which forms part of the theme for Africa Matters, so we're talking climate change, but then how do we finance the climate change budgets on the continent? How do we change that? There is such a low amount of financing that's being injected into China, into Africa's climate change efforts, and will it always involve international donors? Can we get to a point where it is indeed African solutions to African challenges when it comes to this point of financing?
Yeah, you're correct. I think the focus has been on what international organizations, multilateral finance institutions, and other organizations have been doing to help us address this problem of climate change. But and this is the purpose of this summit. We want to make sure that Africa's problems are addressed by Africans. And that means we have to mobilize, yes, international partners, but we also need to work with local partners, specifically get the private sector involved in this. And encouragingly, some banks are already taking this seriously. And I'm thinking of banks here like ABSA, like Standard Bank, and to a lesser extent, NetBank. And we've invited them to participate in this. And we're also inviting institutional investors. We need to make sure that we disseminate the necessary information, we share knowledge, and we shape solutions, develop solutions jointly as Africans to address Africa's problems. And this is the purpose of this. So, yes, the focus and the dependence in the past has been largely on international partners, but now we are saying we want to get Africans involved in addressing Africa's problems.
You are panel member at some of the discussions there at Africa Matters. Can you share with us what your contributions will be to some of these conversations?
Well, I won't be on the panel, but we'll have some of our academics. First of all, the major deliverable from Wits Business School will be the production of an outcomes document, because we don't want this to remain a talk shop. We want it to be a business focused and impactful event that results in outcomes that can be implemented. So that is the first part. The second part is, we have two major panels, three panels. The first one will focus on the regulatory environment, and then the second one will focus on the financing of recovery, Africa's recovery from climate change, and the third one will focus on the recommendations. So we will have some of our academics and associates participating in these panels, on the 25th of March. So we'll be part of this, and we are a knowledge partner, we're an academic partner, and now, as I said, what we do very well is research and innovation, is teaching. It's using our convening power as a business school to bring all the key stakeholders together to find solutions to these problems.
On the regulatory pillar of these panel discussions, how important is collaboration on the African continent when it comes to formulating these regulations and ensuring that they are implemented?
Collaboration is important across the board, but with regard to regulation, and that is a big challenge because we have different diverse regulatory environments. In some cases, they are conflicting, so we want to make sure that in the same way as we have done with trade, with investment protocols, we harmonize regulatory environments in Africa with regard to the management and the tackling of climate change. So the regulatory environment is extremely important, and that is why we've invited high-profile figures from government, from regulatory agencies, to participate in this, so that we can ensure that they are aware, they are au fait with some of the challenges that the continent faces, and how we can work together to develop regulatory regimes that are suited to the African continent, and that which address the specific problems that we face on the continent.
How important will the voices of the youth be to these conversations?
The youth is extremely important because it constitutes the majority of the population of the African continent. Our youth are the custodian of Africa's future, and they have to play a critical role in this discussion, in these deliberations, and that will happen. The future of Africa cannot be determined without the participation and the voice of young people.
In wrapping up the conversation, if we just overall look at what you're hoping will be achieved through Africa Matters, what are the results that you hope to see?
The most important thing, and in our discussion with the leadership at SABC Channel Africa, is that we don't want this to end as just another talk show. And we want this to be a business-oriented, to be a practical, to be a pragmatic, summit that produces implementable outcomes. And so the key deliverables, we hope that we'll be able to develop some kind of a compact that will enable us to ensure that some of those, we begin as a matter of utmost priority to implement some of the outcomes that would have resulted from the discussions that will take place on the 25th of March.
Professor, thank you so much for your time. Exciting times definitely ahead. And thank you so much for joining us today and being part of Africa Matters.
Thank you very much.
That is Professor Mills Soko, who is Professor of International Business Strategy at Wits Business School, the institution that has partnered with Channel Africa on Africa Matters. And that is an initiative that we're counting down to launching Channel Africa's first ever. And it looks at the theme of climate change, but most importantly, financing Africa's recovery when it comes to the challenge of climate change.